Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Real Talk. I'm Brendan Bartik with Brendan Bartik Real Estate Coaching, where our mission is to train the most elite real estate agents and coaches on earth. Today, I'm joined by an amazing guest, Jessica Abegg, who is a fantastic real estate professional. She's a mother of three, an amazing wife to her high school sweetheart. She's got 2 MBAs, a charity that she's very, very passionate about. She's a women's rights advocate. She's basically, when you come down to it, I don't know when you sleep is basically what we say. So Jessica, I'm couldn't be more thrilled to have you on with us. Tell me a little bit about your real estate, well, a little bit about you, obviously, and your real estate philosophy.
Well, thank you. And I just have to say, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted and honored that you invited me to be a guest.
Absolutely.
I love what you're doing. I love the stuff that you're doing and the help that you're giving so many people. So I'm honored to be here.
Thank you.
Well, so a little bit about me. I am a 5th generation Denverite. I grew up very close to where I live now, and have always really been fascinated with real estate, and not just the transactions, but the history and the stories of the homes and the stories of the people in them. I'm a big history lover. And I grew up in Park Hill. And I remember when I was just a kid, I would see the neighbor up the street selling their house and go to my parents and be like, Mom, Dad, they bought this house for, I'm going to date myself here, but they bought the house for like $70,000 and they're selling it for like $110,000. And they have an open house this weekend. So I was a real estate junkie from the beginning. I've always just loved it and been fascinated with it.
Fantastic. And there was an interesting story there about your grandfather, I believe, right? Or is it your great-grandfather? Yeah. I try. So tell me a little bit about that, because I think I think people will get a real kick out of that story, because I haven't heard many things like that in a long time. Especially, I know, again, he kind of passed on the Vail Project, which I think is fascinating. So yeah, explain, because being 5th generation, that's a rarity in itself.
Yeah, it's true. I think there's like 6 of us total.
Yeah.
Well, that's so great that you remember that. I actually have 2 really fascinating intergenerational stories that have contributed to my fascination. One of them is the Vail story. My mother's father was a soldier in the 7th Mountain Division, the soldiers on skis that trained, to be in the Alps and everything in World War II. And when the war was over and everybody came back, they were like, well, what do we do now? What's going to be the next step post-war? And a lot of them got together and started, River Creek and Vail and all these resorts with their knowledge and their love of skiing. And they invited my grandfather to come and be part of this project. And my grandfather was like, yeah, no one's ever going to pay to go skiing. They can ride their car up to the top of the hill and ski down. Why would anyone pay for that? So he passed. And now every time I go up to the mountains, I'm like, this could all be mine.
Oh my gosh. I know.
So the choices we make and the choices we don't make really impact, future generations. So I thought that was fascinating. And then my father's father, he had the vision. He actually bought, in the Depression, the block of Blake Street between 15th and 16th. He bought like almost the entire block, maybe half, 3/4 of the block. And he was like, this is going to be amazing. This is going to really be revitalized. And this is going to be a great area. Because, for a long time, it was very derelict and very, broken down. Yeah. So he was just, he saw it and he held on to the property through really, not a lot of uptick. He held on to it through the recession of the 70s and 80s. And finally was like, it's never going to turn around. We're going to let it go. And they sold it and bought a place, up north and had their businesses there. But 6 months later, Dana Crawford, the developer in Denver, came in, revitalized it. His vision became true. They just weren't part of it. So whenever I go downtown, I'm like, this should all be mine.
Yeah, gosh. Yeah, it's just like, if we could have just hung in there a little bit longer, but that's timing, right? Sliding doors.
You just never know.
Yeah, exactly. Sliding doors. Exactly. Who knows? So your journey into real estate, obviously. So MBAs. What were you doing before that, and what was the light bulb that went off and said, "Hey, I'm going to make that change"?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting. My trajectory is kind of funny because I always did have that love and that fascination, and I started investing in real estate, quite a long time ago. But I had a lot of friends that were realtors, and a lot of them said, I heard horror stories. And then when I had my first child, many very well intended other agents were like, "Oh, you can't really do this with kids. It's a full body. You got to be working all the time. You just can't do it if you have children." And I listened to that for a very long time, and I went in different directions. I was a business coach. I worked with small business owners and helped them with marketing and promotion and all that. I love that too.
Yeah.
But I just kept having the calling, and I just really felt like I needed to do it. So I didn't do it when I had one kid. I waited, as you mentioned, until I had just given birth to my third child. Literally, I was pregnant and having Braxton Hicks contractions 10 days before my daughter was born. When I was taking the real estate exam, I was having Braxton Hicks. So I don't advise that, by the way. I don't necessarily give that as do it, but there's a little bit more to that story of why that timing aligned, but it was what it was meant to be.
Well, in looking at that, so about to have your third, your daughter, you're a couple days away from labor and all this, and the reasoning, I mean, obviously talented in many other areas previously, I like you said, there are some other reasons in there. Was it much more, I guess, yeah, I still am trying to dial in why real estate. What
why then?
Yeah,
okay,
and why
so I'll
then?
tell you
Because that's
the
an interesting time to be like, hey, you know what? Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna get a little bit of woo on you. You ready?
Gotcha.
Little
I
woo woo,
love it.
little half
I
woo.
love it. I like
All
it.
right, so we were living in Miami when I was actually getting involved in with a lot of people who were doing commercial real estate, and a lot of them were like, come work with me, and a lot that were doing residential. And my heart was like, I want to do this, but I really want to do it in Denver. And I said, universe, when we get back to Denver, I promise I'll finally do this. You've been pulling me for a long time. I'll finally do it when we go back to Denver, thinking that was a couple years down the road. And then we were living in Miami when the Zika virus happened. If you guys remember that virus, remember?
Yeah.
And that was the first time ever that the CDC had come out and done a domestic travel ban and said, pregnant women, if don't come to Miami, if you're pregnant here now, leave if you can. And that was a big deal. And so I had to leave Miami a couple years ahead of schedule and landed, of course, back home in Denver. And I was like, all right, the deal's a deal. I said I was going to do this. And I had a very, small time frame to study and get my license. And so I did. And that's why the timing happened the way that it did.
So a pandemic-ish thing working out for something that worked out better.
Make lemonade, right?
There you go. You never know. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So then boom, you've got an infant, your first, month or two into real estate. And, shortly thereafter, I guess, talk to the soon to be moms, the moms out there saying, hey, this is what I, first of all, wish I would have probably maybe done a little bit different. B, I did it exactly the way, I wanted to, and here's how it works. And I think a lot of people get into their heads to go, I can't bring my newborn baby on a showing or to the office, or there's all these preconceived notions of, it's not accepted or it's frowned upon. How did you get past that? And what would you tell, soon to be or current moms out there how to rock it?
These are such great questions. I love that you're asking these questions because truthfully, I think that one of the things I really needed to see was the example of somebody else doing it.
Yeah.
And, again, I had so many people who were like, oh no, you couldn't possibly. And so I was searching and online, and I found this amazing woman, I think in California, Amanda Thompson. She's a Keller Williams agent, and she was a single mom of 3 children. And she was killing it. And she was marketing herself as the millionaire mom, here's don't, just, this is how it's done. And here's what you do. And that was so huge to me. So I think the biggest piece is finding mentors and finding, people who are walking the walk. And now that I'm in the world, truthfully, it's very common. There's a lot of people who are, very successful mothers, fathers. And I came into Keller Williams, actually. I started with a very small brokerage of friends of mine it was like two people in a brokerage. And I just joined them because they were my friends. I realized really quickly that it wasn't a right fit. They didn't have the training and the systems and the things that I really needed. I'm a very big question asker and a very studious. I want systems.
Yeah.
So I found myself interviewing brokerages with a baby on my chest. I thought I had myself set to go. And I called a bunch of other places and was just saying, hey, I'm looking for a place to hang my hat. And I have a baby that's going to be coming with me. Is that okay? And a lot of places were kind of like you said. They were like, yeah, no, or is it a good baby? I was like, have you met babies before? What does that even mean? But when I called Keller Williams, the answer that I got was, we love babies. We're all about family and faith and all these things. Like, bring her in. And like, people came up to me, they're like, your baby's so cute. I was like, this is the place,
Yeah.
And there were so many women in the office, and men too. I found a mentor right away, and I targeted in on him because he had 5 children and he was a pastor and he had a life outside of real estate and had an amazing business. And so I was like, that's the person I want to learn from. And so I approached him. I said, will you mentor me? And he said, wow, I've been doing this for 12 years. No one's ever asked me that. I was like, here I am. So I think the biggest tip I have for people is find the examples that resonate with you, and, don't recreate the wheel, leverage other people's learning curves and ask lots of questions. It's very flattering. Yes. People love to.
They love it. And that's probably the best advice. And it's so funny. Every top producer I speak to, every successful professional, they always go, I seeked out a mentor. I seeked out a model. I seeked out, someone that I can go to and have these questions, because they've already been there. They've already been there. Why make it hard on myself and do, all this creativity and all of that in the beginning, where I can go, hey, how did you do it? What should I be, freaked out by? What should I be worried about? And it makes a big difference. So now you start, right? So talk to me about literally the first showing you brought your newborn infant daughter on, and how were you like, you were just like, let's do it. Like, we'll see how this rocks. And are we like nursing? Are we, I mean, like, I don't, what does that look like? Like, I think
first of all,
what does
the
that
first
look
month,
like?
The first month I was in Ignite, in the training program. So she came with me every single day to the training, and I was starting to kind of build my business. And I remember, the teacher at the time, our team lead at the time was, I was there every single day for the entire training with my daughter. And he was like, okay, if Jessica's here every single day and the rest of you, she's like, she's the only one that showed up every day. None of y'all have excuses if she's able to make it with a baby.
Exactly.
And I am nursing and I'm changing diapers in the back. And, my daughter knows more about real estate than anybody.
I bet.
Yeah. But I did go to showings of my clients in the beginning. I built my business entirely by sphere. So most of the people that I was working with were friends and family out of the gate. And I did realize, for everybody's sake, there were pieces of the business that I did integrate her into, and pieces of the business where I got help and I got assistance in things logistically. But this is one piece, this is actually one other piece of advice that I want to give, and not just moms, but really anybody getting into real estate or business in general. It takes so much energy and commitment and just chutzpah to get anything off the ground and to get through that really difficult takeoff period. There's a lot of rejection, right? There's a lot of no's. There's a lot of energy going out without anything coming back. So one thing I did, and I think was really helpful to me, I sat down and I wrote out a contract with myself. I call it my soul contract, but I was just like, no matter what happens, no matter how many people I sign, no matter how many people subscribe or unsubscribe to my newsletter, come on my walking tours, no matter what happens, I'm going to show up every day and give this my all. And this is a deal between myself. And so the rest of it doesn't matter, the noise and the rejection and all that stuff. If I just show up and do it, then I'm considering myself very successful. And when I would have a bad day, I have it right here on my wall. I look at that and I'm like, this is why I'm doing it. This is my why. Right. And so I think having that deep rooting, and it makes the rest of it immaterial. And I think that's a really important trick for people getting into this business.
So where did the thought of a soul contract? Because I love that. So, I think we both are very much where we love visual goals. We love making sure that we have a vision of understanding. Because a lot of people, I say it all the time, you can't figure out where you're going if you don't know what it is you want. right? And I think and it changes over time. I tell people all the time, I'm like, it might, it could change every year, every 3 years, every 5 years, but most people just don't have anything to even shoot for. So what is the why? I know your passion for travel, your passion for charity. So real estate is a fuel to accomplish what?
It's a very, very fun vehicle that I love.
Yes.
Well, so I have always been a very big traveler. In my time, I have lived and worked and studied and traveled in over 45 countries, just getting started. And so when I did, like, up until I had my first child, I was taking an international trip at least once a year, if not many more. I used to be a flight attendant, so I did a lot. And then when my son was born, kind of subconsciously, it was like, oh, life's over. Like, it's done. And so I stopped traveling, and I was really sad, and I couldn't quite figure it out. He was about 5 at this time. And so I was like, something is off. And I sat down with it and I was like, it's traveling. I miss it and I love it. And I have to figure out a way to make it work for myself, but also for my kids, because I think this was also around the time of San Bernardino. If you remember that shooting in California.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was just like, there's something in our culture, in our world, where this lack of interconnection and experiencing one another really, I think, contributes to a lot of the problems we're having. So I was like, I want my kids to experience something besides this little myopic experience. So I created this thing called the Wonderful World Project. Every year I give the babies 2 countries to choose from, and we spend 9 months or so studying the language and the culture and the food and the history, and they set a financial goal. So, they're little, so they're like, oh, I'm going to save $30. And we go to the bank every month and they put in, birthday checks, or if they make some money or whatever, they put it in. So they're watching their balance grow. And then we work together to pick like a civil service project in country. So when we were in Cuba, we worked to this really rural school that had no running water, no electricity, no school supplies, and we brought a bunch of supplies. And when we went to Colombia, we were to work with this homeless Venezuelan population. We have physicians and engineers, people living on the street, homeless, starving, and we went and worked with them so that they are seeing something that's bigger than themselves and connecting to something that's bigger. And then they have the tourist experience too, and then we come home and we start all over again with another country. So my big why is to fund that project and to be able to give them and myself and everybody, that gift, and show other people how to also to do that and to travel with children and give them that experiential learning, one adventure at a time.
Which is phenomenal. And when you really think about that, the limiting beliefs of most real estate agents or even business professionals is, I don't have, well, first of all, I can't do it because no one understands my family schedule and my kids. And then number 2, I can't travel as a real estate agent because if I'm traveling, who's going to take care of my business? Mm-hmm. So you've answered, you're doing both of those and you're doing quite well. So if people say that to you, what do you tell them? Is it, because I would ask this, your daily schedule, it must have a very chaotic yet rhythm that goes to it, because there's no other way to really do it. But I think I would probably be very curious to know, are you sitting at home at 5:30 watching Netflix until 9:00 at night?
What is Netflix? I don't watch TV now. No.
See, but that's a big piece, right? Just that alone, right? Mm-hmm. I think so many people, they don't get that there's so much time in the day. So talk to me what a daily schedule-ish looks like, or even maybe more so a weekly, because how do you have time to plan the trip? How do you have time to take the kids? How do you have time for showings? What's the magical juggling act that's happening behind the scenes?
And that is exactly what it is. Everyone's like, oh, you've got the whole work-life balance. Ain't no such thing. There is none. We're really building the airplane as we're flying it, right? It's constant navigation. And the answer to all of those things is yes, there's a husband and there was a nanny and there was a schedule. And truthfully, COVID has kind of thrown major curveballs. And there have been 3 children home where they had all been, in Montessori and with, a very structured structure where I could really fit a lot of meat into that time. And now I'm fitting it in still and continuing to do it. But with 3 children, I'm also attending to and everything. So it has been intense. And I think that is another reason why that contract is so important, because without the pandemic, without, all the millions of things that are happening in our world right now, pulling for our attention just in daily life, there are so many things that come up, and, demands of family, demands of health, all the different
Clients,
things.
demands of clients.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But and so it's like, to keep yourself on a path and keep yourself steady, it's like, it has to be from a much deeper motivation than I want to make a lot of money or I want to be the top, whatever. Like, it has to be something that will keep you going, that North Star that'll keep you going in spite of everything. And it's like, okay, COVID, I'm going to keep going because it's, there's this going on. And,
Right.
and I think it's also about prioritizing. I mean, I joke about Netflix, but I don't watch a lot of television.
Sure.
I don't, I really, I always ask myself, when my energy is very precious, is this contributing to what's really important to me, or is this detracting? And that's with people and with relationships and, a lot of things. And it can be very hard when you have so many things coming at you all the time to be constantly filtering. But that kind of laser focus happens when you're aligned with what really matters.
Now, did you learn this technique from this mentor that you had talked about? I mean, obviously you were a business coach early on. It sounds like you come from a driven history of family, obviously, right? Right. They're very driven. How did you wake up one day and you were like, was there ever a time where you were like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Screw the world. Like, did a light bulb go off? Was it, I mean, I know you married your high school sweetheart, so you guys obviously had a lot of time to build with each other along the way. Talk to me about how did you, how'd you do it? Where,
A lot of questions in that question. But I do think that there is, for me, I love learning. And it's funny, I actually posted on Facebook recently. I found an old picture of myself in like kindergarten where I'm sitting on the edge of my seat with my hand in the air, like me. And everybody around me is just like,
yeah. I was the kid in the back, like throwing something.
Picking your nose,
I was like cracking jokes or doing something stupid. Yeah.
But that's part of my inherent personality, and that's part of the traveling and everything else. Like, I love experience, and I love learning, and I love, just growing and pushing myself. The business acumen, truthfully, it came in a lot of, with time and a lot of just experiential lessons and failing a lot. I did have to learn a lot of stuff. I do come from a very driven family, and interestingly enough, I come from a line of very strong women, actually. And all the way back to my great grandmother. I have examples of women who supported their own, their families, through their own entrepreneurial efforts. My great grandmother, she was an author, and she supported a family of 7 through the Great Depression. She was published internationally, and no one was ever rich or really all that famous, but they did it, and so I always had that example. In fact, I named my daughter for 3 of the women that came before her. She's Mattingly Rose Marie, so great grandma, grandma, great grandma, whatever. Yeah. So to remind her of what she comes from. So I have that piece in me, but I also think everybody has that piece in them, right? It's just a matter of aligning what those callings are, what those, where everyone has enthusiasm about something, and then coupling it with systemic diligence. It's that one thing and the slight edge. The idea of showing up every day and putting a little bit into the bank. And time on task over time is something that I think a lot of people do not understand the power of. And I think I often say the biggest success secret in real estate is just keep showing up, like just keep doing it. Like, people expect instant gratification and they want it yesterday. And it's like, why am I not successful in my first month? And I think, and that's partly, we're trained to be employees more than to be entrepreneurially minded. So that's a skill set.
So as you started to, it's 100% a skill set that can be learned and practiced. So as you started to going back to that, so I'm going to come back to 2 things. One is you have a very strong draw to history and to tradition and to, basically learning from the previous people and their strengths and how to be strong and all of that. And that's tied over into one of your marketing techniques, I guess was the best way of saying it, where you have this phenomenal walking tour, right? And so I'm gonna come back to the walking tour in a second. with your philosophy of business, as started to do this with the kids, and it was mostly by sphere, did you, because a lot of people go, well, I'd love to have a business built on sphere and family. I just want to be very clear. Did you ever call a single expired listing?
Can I really answer that with you? Because I think I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I'm a straight A student. No. And we were
Sure.
trained to, right? In the first thing, it's like, okay, everybody, we have 5 minutes, go call these things. And I was like, hi,
Not for
Bill,
me.
how are you?
Yeah, right. Well, this is why I want to. Why I
No.
want to bring it up is because there's so many different ways to attack this. So, did you ever call a for sale by owner?
No, well, I think maybe like I probably did a couple of cold calls, but the
Okay.
truth is like I think it's real important to understand exactly that there are so many ways to do it. And if you don't align with yourself and what like makes sense to you, it's going to be painful and no one's going to stick with painful. So you have to go where it's pleasurable to do the business. And for me, it's all like relationships. But no, I do not do cold calling.
Gotcha.
I do not do expireds or FISBOs or any of that stuff. And not to say that I wouldn't. I know a lot of people who've gone through bold and stuff. It's like, I'm glad I did it because it gave me that experience, whatever. But I just haven't needed to. And, it's
Right.
like a point now where it's like, I ain't have time to, do
Right.
anything like that. But
So then,
I think that there are people who would die doing it the way I do it. They would hate it.
Sure. And that's the different style. So if you're not doing outbound, not to say traditional, but going believe me, people ask me every day, how can I get around not having to call expireds or for sale by owners or any of this? What was the first few months like of beginning this database system that you were doing? Did you just sit down and you go, hey, I'm going to write out every single human being I know? Were you like, hey, I'm going to go on Facebook and, just start attacking that way? What worked and what didn't work, and what are any lessons that you learned along the way? And if you could go back and say, hey, I wanted to change a couple of things, because you do some really cool things now that built onto that. But at some point you had to sit there and go, well, I don't want to make cold calls. So how do I get people to buy and sell houses from me? Where did you do?
Well, so I'm coachable, right? So, my mentor and my training was saying, your money's in your list. And in fact, my mentor, I love open houses. Like I love connecting with people and it's a party and, hi, everybody. My mentor finally said, like, stop, like you have this great list already. You need to be nurturing the list rather than adding new people into it all the time that you don't have time to nurture. But I did start out with like, going through all my Facebook contacts, my phone contacts, my LinkedIn contacts, email, like all that stuff, and just compiling it. I was very surprised, like, wow, I got a lot of people in here. And then I adopted that 36 touch now, or tried to very quickly. And so started with a newsletter and started with the walking tours and things like that. And always trying to do touches that were of value, whenever I would call my sphere or do the newsletter, it's like, hey, I'm giving you this tour, or I'm giving you this piece of information, or I'm giving you whatever.
You weren't calling them. You weren't calling them and saying, hey, I've got these goals I want to hit. Can you help me? Would you buy a house for me or sell a house for me? Right. You were coming from value, and that's very different. And with that, just with the value piece, how many people did you start with, and where did you start as far as people in the database? If we're talking about, and you kind of skipped over a 33 touch, because a lot of people that are listening may or may not know what that is in a different world. But so explain how big the list was when you started, where the list is now, and your version of a 33 touch marketing campaign or human contact database nurture campaign.
Yeah. So I think I started probably with about maybe 300, like, kind of doing it that way. And then my mentor or somebody said, you should have about $100,000. This is like for every 200 people, you should be making $200,000 or whatever for 303 or something like that. Sure. And I was just like, I got to get more people. I was like, oh my gosh. So everybody was like, that person. And then adding to it from that and, continuing to do that. So now my database is probably, depending if you're counting spouses as individuals, probably about 1,000. Okay. And that's from people who come to my tours or, who've signed up through other ways, to my newsletter and stuff. And that's actually my tours are my hook for getting people onto my newsletter.
So talk to us about that, because when you say the hook, so we're talking about your neighborhood walking tour. Mm-hmm. How did you brainchild that? What does it look like to operate it? If somebody is in a different city right now and they want to start a walking tour, what would you tell them?
And they can start it in my city. That's totally fine. You
Yeah,
can do it.
true. Yeah,
There's enough tours for
enough.
everybody.
Yeah,
Well, so I remember David Fowler, an agent in our office, was teaching a class, and he said, "What moves you moves your business." And I loved that. And he's a big music guy, so he does big concerts and brings everybody
yeah,
together. And I am, as you touched on, a huge history person. And so I was like, "Gosh, it'd be so fun to teach people about the history of each neighborhood." There's all these, oh, this is the latest and greatest, and it's super hot and hip. But it's like, did you know this used to be this? And here's the
sure.
layers of this place. So I reached out to a historian that I really respect. In fact, my first date with my husband was on one of his tours. I've been a groupie for a long time. And I said, would you be interested in doing this? And he was like, sure. So we've been doing those neighborhood tours for a couple of years now. And I pay him, and he gets to do his spiel, and he gets to promote his other tours, and he gets to sell his books. He's written like 30 books. And, we do an hour, sometimes a 2-hour tour, and it's free. It's compliments of me to anybody who wants to come. And they can be quite popular. We have one in around Halloween, the Ghosts of Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
You get it, I have to cap it at 80 people, and it sells out like that because people love that stuff.
Wow.
And it's great. And I get to be, I get up in front and I get to do my little spiel and say, here's who I am. And I don't want to tell you to buy or sell a house with me, but I do want to earn your trust. And, so I'm going to give you information and give you value and more tickets to these tours. And so I kind of get up and then connect. And so when I meet people or I have a coffee with somebody or whatever, I tell them about these tours. And I said, if you'd be interested, I'd love to put you on the list. So I get their permission to add them to my marketing. And they're like, yeah, totally. I'd love to. So I have been, just using that as a hook. The 33 touch, really to just, it's a deep dive, but to really just give an overview is like, it's all about just staying top of mind, right? So it's about just little touches throughout the year. And because I'm relationship, I do, birthday cards and happy anniversary and happy house anniversary. And I'm so sorry, I just saw on Facebook your dog died. And so I'm writing those handwritten notes, and I'm doing, a bunch of client appreciation events, or I'm doing pop buys where I give a little present or have them come in for a pumpkin pie, whatever.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a reflection of your personality,
Yeah.
right? You're not out there trying to get 1,000 internet leads and sit there in your office and try to convert them, because it sounds like that would want you to cry, right? Like that would be your nightmare, right?
Well, actually, I think that it would be fun too. I just think it's, it's really fun to do business with people that already like and trust you, and they're coming to you, and, they're already sold before you even,
So does the newsletter talk about the walking tours, the real estate market, your life? Is it kind of it's everything, right? It's not just here's mortgage rates and here's what's happening in the market. Because a lot of people think newsletter and they think market stats. A lot of people, they default and they just go, you've heard HomeBot and these other things and Altos market reports and all that, and they just go, I'm just going to put them on that, and then do it once a month, and then people will call me and want to buy and sell houses from me. That doesn't exist, right? It's got to have something that people can relate to. It has to have a soul, right?
Yeah.
So are you writing it? Are you having someone help you write it? How much time does it take? What does it look like?
Yeah, well, I do most of it myself, and I'm actually trying to get away from that because it's a time factor.
It's a lot.
But I also, because I replicate it, every month, it's like the same template, and I do the market stats, but I repurpose it. So I am very visual. And I think that, most people, it's how you package it and how people can digest it. There are high D people who want that stat information, but I make it look pretty. And then I will talk about the walking tours, or I'll talk about, sometimes I'll just be like, here's the best brunch places in Denver, in my market. Here's the greatest hikes within 40 minutes. Those kinds of value things that, that are not necessarily about real estate, but more community. And then I'll sometimes, I'll be like, oh, here's the houses that we've sold, and I've been so honored. Who do you know who needs help with their, experience? So there's a lot of different things. And then sometimes I will have like guest bloggers, or, I'll get content from somebody else, about like the best 10 tips for staging your house under
Sure.
$100 or whatever. So yeah, kind of a little bit of a combination of each. And over time, I have refined it so it's a lot less time. But it's one of those things. It's like it's always on my list. Oh, I got to do a newsletter again.
Sure.
So
Of
I'm
course.
having my assistant help with that more.
Yeah, it's tough. So that's going out to 1,000 people. Then the personal touches, birthday cards, those types of things, client events, doing all of those things and keeping all that. Is there a target haven't met bucket? Meaning, are you trying to farm? We hear that word a lot in our industry. Farm a specific area, or is it really just built around? Your intake is the walking tours, referrals from past clients. Is there anything that you're doing to try to market to a bigger pot of people, or is that the walking tour? What does that look like?
Well, and it's interesting. It has evolved over time, and of course, with COVID, there's been a lot of pivoting because we're not doing the walking tours. We haven't been able to do the walking tours since
Yeah.
March. We're looking at we're coming up on October, and we're like, I was talking to my tour guide yesterday. I was like, should we even try this? Or like take like 15 people and have a social distancing around
All right.
Capitol Hill? Like it's
Yeah.
so we're figuring it out. And then I was actually starting to farm. I live in Congress Park, and I work everywhere because I work with Sphere, but I really love this neighborhood and the history here and everything. So my goal for 2020 was actually I started my kids at the local school just up the street, and getting involved and getting really community oriented just right here. And that's kind of gone sideways. So I do intend to, but what I've found in this year is through referrals and the efforts of my last 2 years, so much is just referrals right now. Like I'm still doing lead generation, but I'm not doing it to the scale that I have to yield what I'm yielding right now. And that I do a lot with, hey, if you liked working with me, and kind of asking for those referrals and nurturing and teaching and training people how to refer me. And that seems to be going very well.
Excellent. Yeah. Which I mean, and I think for everyone listening and all of our listeners, they're just trying to figure out also the ramp up time. So from time that you started, kind of back in the beginning, you said about 200 to 300 people. Now the list is about 1,000. Would you say 50% of your business comes from that database, 75%, 100%? What percentage is coming from that list of 1,000?
Well, if you're counting referrals as kind of the coming from that list, then probably I would say 80%. I do, because of my name and some of the things I've done with like online presence,
Yeah.
I do get a lot of referrals from other markets. People are like, oh, I'm looking for a Keller Williams agent, and oh, her last name is Abegg, and I'm only going to go that far into my research.
Yeah.
So I think
Nice
my
to
name
be an
helps.
A and a B.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone change
Yeah.
your name to
Right.
ABC.
Right.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I do get a good bit of business from that. It helps, yeah. And then people find my marketing, and they'll be like, "Oh, you look like somebody we'd like to work with." They'll find my videos or whatever. So there is a little bit of that, and then, but most of it is Sphere and referral.
Gotcha.
And it took time. I mean, this is the thing too. This is the piece about the ramp up, and even my Sphere. I mean, my Sphere see me do a couple different things. My friends, my family. Sometimes that's a really hard place to get business because they're like, oh, what's Jessica doing now? Oh, I thought she was a this and now she's a that. And so there's a piece of it that's like, I got to trust you. I got to watch you do this for a little while before I feel confident in getting my biggest asset in your hands. And now it's like, there's proof. People now, I have established that trust, and that takes time. So my first year, I'll just tell you, I did 2 deals in a year.
Right.
And that was humbling. I was like, geez, I knew it was going to be hard, but where's my soul contract? Like,
Sure.
I need that.
Yeah.
But, it started to pick up in year 2. And it was year 3, I was, one of the top producers in the office. So it's like, it's that understanding the planting, the harvesting, the reaping and the sowing of the business.
Well, and you're a firm believer of a servant heart, right? A servant heart. So for those out there, what does that mean? Because I think that ties into your business philosophy and real estate philosophy. What does that mean?
I love that. Thank you. I love that. And I think that is very, very, very true. And I think it's Zig Ziglar who said, if you want to be, is it Zig Ziglar that said, if you want to, be successful, help other people to be successful, help other people reach their goals, and you'll be rewarded. And that is inherently me. I'm I'm a cheerleader, and I'm a support person, and I'm a nurturer. And so the first thing I do when I meet somebody is I'm like, tell me everything about you and what are your goals? And this is something it's inherently me. It's also something I've culled from, my mentor, where I think a lot of people are like, here's me, and I'm the most this, and I'm so, shiny and stuff. But I will say, what are the goals? And I will remind people of them. I'll be like, hey, remember, what the end goal is for this. And kind of, there can be mission drift in house hunting too, but I think that piece about, I want my people to be so, feeling that they're so cared for and so supported, and that the process is fun. And it's not a fun process. It's a stressful, crazy process, even under the best of circumstances. But if I'm doing my job right, it's exciting. And I'm celebrating, like, hey, happy inspection day, happy appraisal day, and I just, and going every step of the way. And so I think that I just genuinely enjoyed that. And I think that is kind of one of the things my husband actually said yesterday. He's like, you're so good at this. And it's like, there's all these people who it's like, they really just, it's the transaction, and you fall in love with your people, and you fall in love with the houses. I learn all about the history of the house, and, and I love it. It's exciting. And I think the caring about, all of that, and believing that everybody in the transaction can win. The seller can win, the buyer can win, the listing agent can win, the buyer's agent can win. We all are going to come together, and we're going to negotiate, and we're not going to, whatever. It can be really tough, but I think that there's a way to make it that everybody can win, even if it comes a little bit out of my pocket. I want everybody to do well in it. And I think that I've had a lot of agents come back and say, and when the transaction's over, like, I'm going to miss working with you, and can I write a review for you? And that means a lot to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're looking at the long term, not the paycheck. And, that's not easy for a lot of people. Right. And I think a lot of people get very fussy about being right. When you just said working with other agents, and those agents wanting to still work with you in the future, even though there's, in any market, thousands of agents, it's a small pool of people that, your name, you start burning these bridges. It's a hard road to come out of. So yeah, I think that's extremely important. Well, one of the things we always like to chat about too is tech, right? When I say that word, tech-enabled agent, we're going to kind of switch gears here a second. What are you utilizing to handle all of this business? And yeah, what are you using? What does it look like?
Yeah, well, it's funny because historically I'm kind of a Luddite. I'm not a tech person. But I have been really grateful. Our brokerage gives us an app. I give all my clients the app, and I don't have to develop it. I don't have to do anything. I just have to click a button, and here you go, and my picture's on it. And I use our software. I just started using our Command, which is has all the CRM and everything else, because I had everything in different buckets. Yeah. I was using Brian Buffini's referral maker for my CRM for a while, and I really liked it. Yeah. But then I was, you referenced HomeBot, all these different things, and it's kind of like the lead gen. Like, you kind of have to figure out which technology works for you and supports you the best, and it should be making life easier. So anything that, the fact that so much is housed in one place has been really helpful. But I don't leverage it to its full capacity, and I really need to. I need to kind of be more better about that. But there are some things that I'm evaluating right now that I am using, like HomeBot and like the send out cards, the boomerang and stuff, that a lot of other people are using. And I'm kind of like, somebody gave me feedback, like, I get this from 3 other people. Ugh. And I'm like, I don't like that. But I do like the, set it and forget it. I'm all about set it and forget it.
Right. Well, that's the hard thing, is on set it and forget it, you lose personality. Right. And that's the hardest part, is finding that balance between automation and sincerity. Right. Because you just hit it the best. And I just had this conversation yesterday with a few agents, and they're like, well, I got them on Boomerang. I got them on this automated postcard. And I go, that's great. That, first of all, that makes you better than most agents, because they're not doing anything. Right. I go, that's awesome. But I go, if you don't mix in the personal note card, the pop by, the phone call, the rest of the actual touches, people just go, I got a database of 1,000. People are on 1,000 boomerang cards. And last year I did 20% of my business from referrals. And I'm like, you're lucky you got 20. Like, no,
Yeah.
you're wondering why. And they're like, well, what do you want me to do? And it's like, you have to engage, you have to call, you have to talk, you have to do all these things. The tech should be hopefully helping you accomplish that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And making that better. So, okay. And then the one other thing I wanted to chat about quickly is now you have an assistant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, in the journey of all agents, it's obviously the next step is leverage. So you have tech leverage, technology leverage, and then you have human leverage, right? People that are going to help you do it. So, when did you decide that it was time to get an assistant, and how is it going, and what lessons have you learned? Because I think you've learned some lessons early on already about it. Talk to me a little bit about that leverage piece.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think when I first came in, I'm a systems-minded person, and I had some a background, in kind of building teams and leveraging teams, and that kind of thing. So I was like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to build a team really fast, and I had this vision of what it was going to look like and how quickly it was going to happen, and that's been a bit of a humbling process because it's not as it's tricky. And actually we have the Millionaire Real Estate Agent that kind of speaks to it, and they talk about some of the challenges that people really run into, and I've run into all of them. One of them is letting go of control.
Mm.
I
Oof.
like to oversee everything. I like to have things done to a certain standard, and I also see the good in everybody. So when I'm interviewing people, I'm like, oh, they'll be fine, I can see their potential, and da da da. But then I'm like, I spend a lot of energy like training and da-da-da. And it's like, so figuring out how to be more discerning in that leveraging process, and not just like, hey, you can fog a mirror, you're perfect.
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah, and that's tricky. It's rare to find the person that not only can systematically do the things that you need to do and can do it with quality, but can also be like a synergistic fit personally and all that. So I've had to kind of slow down and take time and be more intentional about that. COVID also threw a wrench into that. I hired my first assistant in February, and we were doing, all the things that were in person, the walking tours, and he's helping with event management. And then when everything shut down, it's like, okay. So he kind of actually went and did something else. We spent some time onboarding, and then he redirected. So I've hired someone else, and she's helping me with a lot of the personal touches that are automatable, not automatable,
Sure.
but I give her the script for all the cards, and
Yeah,
she does all
helping
that
you scale
handling.
it. She's helping you
Yep.
scale. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And stuff that's like that, even if I love to do it, it's not the best use of my time. And it's just slowing. It's making me crazy because I'm doing 95,000 things. And so she's taking a lot of those things on.
Well, and
Um,
you've also been doing all this. Speaking about the COVID, right? I believe your son has asthma. Is that correct?
mhm.
Yeah.
And I have
So,
asthma. Yep.
and you have asthma. So you've not been in the office. You're not working from an actual physical office. At different times, you've been working from one of a vacation property. You've been working from your actual home. What is it like? I mean, are you, a client calls up and they say, hey, I want to go see a house tomorrow. What does that look like?
Well, that is another blessing of COVID, is I've gotten much better about letting go and much better at outsourcing and leveraging. Like you said, we've been in our house in the mountains, for almost like 2 months. We were there completely, and then we were kind of back and forth between Denver and there. And so I had to leverage showing assistants and be like,
Mm.
hey, I can't be there, but my so-and-so can. And I learned how to do a lot of things in my business that I didn't think I could do: buyer consultations and listing presentations virtually. And so
Yeah.
it gave me this gift of, stepping back a little bit and not having to be so hands-on. And I think the world's kind of come to expect that anyways as well. So that's been super helpful. And, actually I was supposed to be up showing clients properties in like Summit County last weekend. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, hey, who wants to do this for me? Like, I'm going to go be with my family. And so I think it's like really, it's kind of like I was saying earlier, realizing what the ultimate goal is. My ultimate goal is not to work myself to death. My ultimate goal is to have a business and a life that I love. And so, I need to make room for the life part of it too. And if I can do that, and it's actually really helpful to somebody else. I've got some showing assistants. They're new into the business. They're hungry. They are excited, and they want to go do showings, and they want to learn how to do these things, and they need some money. So
Yeah.
paying them to do it is a win-win.
Well, I always tell people you don't get paid to show houses,
Right.
right? And then you can still have an amazing client experience and have other people go open doors,
Hmm.
for you. And people just get into their head about that. They're like, man, I'm
Got to
just
do
the
it all.
best house shower on earth. I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, what? You
I
you
think what
you
that's really about, though, is that I think a lot of people feel like they don't want they want their clients to have the best experience.
right.
And so I think a lot of that setting expectations. And so I've learned in my presentations or my client conversations, I will say, I am just like 100% your champion. I'm always going to be here. There's going to be times where I'm with my family or with other clients or the timing, just whatever, that you'll have showing assistants. And I'll say that. So they're like, oh, okay, whatever. Whereas if I'm like, I'm me, it's here and I'm 100% taking care of you, but someone else is going to be doing all this for you, then they're like, well, geez, So I think
Yeah.
just
People
establishing
people
that.
don't want to feel like they got passed off, right? Like they
Exactly.
were an
Precisely.
afterthought. Yeah,
Hmm.
as you said, setting the stage for the expectation of look, yeah, there's going to be time. I'm a human too. I take vacations. I actually take weekends and I like to go, do X, Y, and Z. And clients are pretty understanding, especially if you're in a relationship built business. Now, if you're more cold and internet, they might not be so understanding because
Hmm.
they're, a different they don't have any care for you, right? And
Right.
that's another benefit of having a database driven business that's relationship based. And it's been a big transition for me even thinking about that, because I was always brought up in the culture of just call work, you make 50,000 contacts and do all this, and it works. There's no question it works. It obviously is.
Numbers game.
It is a numbers game. And now we've been really shifting to this database situation, and it's been eye opening to realize it's just better.
It's
it's
just,
just
yeah.
it's just
And
better on every avenue,
yeah,
every
it feels better
absolute
for everybody, I think,
yeah,
too.
yeah. So then, well, Jessica, obviously appreciate your time and want to keep you on schedule. So for everyone out there, clients, maybe agents that want to speak to you and understand, moms out there, heck, dads, stay-at-home dads out there, all these people. What's the best way to, and especially to find out about these walking tours? Because I've heard about them. I mean, as you said, once we can figure out a way to do it, you're going to have such a backlog. I think you're going to be like, yeah, you're going to need to, figure out how to scale that in a different type of aspect. But what's the best way to connect with you? And how do we connect with you?
Well, I have, so for the walking tours, you could go to jessicaabegg.com, and it's just /walking tours, I think. And then we will post the schedule and you can reach out about getting tickets for those to me directly. And then for my Wonderful World project, it's wonderfulworldproject.com. It is a little bit under construction right now, but it gives an overview if people are interested in traveling with with their kids. And we're working on putting a curricula and things like that onto the website. But those are the best ways to get in touch with me. jessicaabegg.com, wonderfulworldproject.com.
No, excellent. And we'll put all of that in the description below, and make sure all her contact information is available so you can connect with her on social, do all that. If you're looking to buy or sell real estate, invest in wealth, I know another, thing that we didn't have time in this episode, but, Jessica's very passionate about building a legacy of wealth through real estate. She's actually probably one of her biggest qualities is she helps people build wealth through real estate and makes them understand of how that can work. Reach out to her. You're not going to find anyone else better in the game that's going to be able to really care about what you want, care about your goals, have those consultations with you. You're going to probably end up being best friends with her. So just be prepared for that. and just, connect with her, right? See, make sure that you get to experience that type of servant behavior that really is going to make sure you have a great experience. So Jessica, thank you for joining us here on Real Talk. Everyone, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to us on the actual Apple podcast or any podcast, make sure you follow us, subscribe, comment. We'd love to hear your feedback. Like it, share it, give it to a friend. Let them know that we're going to be doing this. If you think that you might want to be a guest on our show or know a guest that you think you would like us to interview, please reach out to us. We would be more than happy. And as always, I wish you great success. So thanks for joining us for Real Talk. Join us next week where I'm going to be interviewing Daniel Dixon, and we're going to be going over how he went from agent to empire builder. He has multiple companies, a massive real estate team, on track to do over $150 million in residential real estate. You don't want to miss it.